My previous video about pendulums was kind of like an overview to give you an idea of what pendulums are and how they exist in our life, and how even social groups or even YouTube channels like this channel could be a pendulum as well. In this video, I want to share more about if you are in a pendulum, if a pendulum is working against you, what can you do? How can you solve the problem of the pendulum, or how can you leave the pendulum, or how can you totally stop the pendulum from running? Once again, pendulums is a concept that was introduced in the book Reality Transurfing by Vadim Zeland. Awesome book, and I've decided to make a series of these videos. Do comment below if you're enjoying this content. As I was reading through the pages from 30 to 50 something and looking through some of the examples, it reminded me of a book that I read long ago in literature class in school, Animal Farm. Animal Farm itself is a great story of a pendulum. Examples of pendulums can also be found in many of the TV shows and animes as well. In Attack on Titan, an anime that I covered in the previous video, pendulums were being used to pit two different nations against each other during those times because information was not readily accessible or could be distributed. It was easy for leaders of different countries or cities to disseminate information to cause animosity between their people and the people of the city that they want to beat down or they want to acquire. In the book Vadim Zeland, he gave an example. If I wanted to make people hate bees, all I need to do is to hit a bee nest, have the bees start coming out and going towards the group of people. Everyone is going to be convinced that we need to exterminate the bees. In another anime, Windbreaker, anime about delinquent school gangs in Japan. This group, Shishitoren, had a very toxic trait, which is that only the strong can remain. If a member loses any street fight for that matter, he will be publicly disgraced, beaten up, spat upon, have his jacket removed, basically forcibly expelled. And this makes an example that sets fear to the other members in the group as well. So in these ways, pendulums can place a lot of stress and they can control the people that are in their group through fear, guilt, stress. Coming from Singapore, you know what? This is a more appropriate shirt to wear. Singapore is a fine city. I come from Singapore, and people who have visited Singapore will tell you that they enforce many things to a very great extent. You get fined for spitting, fined for littering, and if you park in a place where you're not supposed to, within 5 minutes, you get a huge fine. Even to have a political demonstration is also an offense. They call it unlawful assembly. With all these fines in place, it makes people very wary of their actions to the point that they may not even be doing something wrong, but they are wary that they could be somewhat breaking the law. As I demonstrated in the previous video, I want you to observe now that a pendulum only swings within a certain area. There are areas that outside of the pendulum that is not being covered. Unfortunately, when a pendulum is in place, it forces you to pay attention only to a certain spectrum. And that is why, in order to break free of a pendulum's control, or to solve a pendulum, to stop a pendulum, we need to maintain our external focus. We need to look at it from a perspective of an observer. I'm not directly influenced by this. I'm able to see all the ways around it. We also need to recognize that if we pay attention to what's causing the fear, the uncertainty, we're actually giving strength to the pendulum, the same pendulum that we want to be free of, the same pendulum that we possibly want to destroy or stop or leave. And I must say, cities with too many laws and constraints that governs its people through the use of fear and punishment, it really takes a toll on the older generation, like the baby boomers. For example, again, my mom, she gets very paranoid just because I'm trying a different business venture, a different business approach. And this approach is something that she has not heard of before. And she wonders if I'm breaking any international laws. And I have to reassure her that it's perfectly fine. But of course, reassuring is easier said than done, because when someone is living part of a pendulum for such a long time, they are in a habit of being in that pendulum. In order to help them to break out of the pendulum, we need to help them to realize the pendulum. And sometimes people could be in a certain pendulum that exists in a larger pendulum. And that's precisely how it works, because in my previous video, I talked about how pendulums can merge and gain strength. The more fear, the more attention that we put to towards laws, restrictions. It gives the governance, the pendulum, more power. Every country has its own forums and bulletin boards that work the same way as Reddit. Citizens come and express their opinions, and they will get paranoid about this thing, this thing, this thing, all these things, each of these things. Once people subscribe to it, what happens? They get sucked into that pendulum, and basically the government, a government that rules based on fear and punishment, swallows all these mini pendulums into its large pendulum. The good news is, all we need to do is to be able to step away from the pendulum. Once we can distance ourselves from this, we essentially remove its power to control us. However, I'm sure the subscribers of Inspire and Random are noble and heroic, and surely you want to free people that you care and love from the pendulums that they're in, that are negatively affecting their lives as well. To that end, you may have heard of a phrase called to agree to disagree. Agree to the problem. Acknowledge that this is an issue. Vadim Zeland, he says, as long as you acknowledge it, a person of the pendulum will show you to the whole labyrinth of what this pendulum is about. So you agree to disagree. First, you agree that this is an issue, that it exists, and then without getting drawn into it. Sometimes this requires a little bit of acting. Again, I do not believe that this is a real issue, but just to be able to see it from your perspective. Then when I can fully understand the situation, and I can fully think as the point of an observer without just the scope of this pendulum swing, I'm able to look all around it as well. I'm not controlling my focus on something that they want me to see. I see things as it is. That way we can find the solution. Think of it as tech support. Imagine one of your uncles or aunts call tech support about their broken refrigerator or microwave, and then they start putting all kinds of other unnecessary details into it. Tech support staff patiently listens. For example, this caused such a great inconvenience. My cat wasn't having a good nap on top of the fridge because it was shaking in such a strange way. And this shaking of the fridge is making us very uneasy. It's like there's a spirit in the house, and we don't know if the electricity in the house has an issue. Is it because of the currents being unstable that the fridge is vibrating in a certain way? And the food in the fridge, if the fridge is not functioning properly, I'm not sure if eating the food that's in the fridge is going to cause us a tummy ache. The tech support staff is going like, oh yeah, I'm sure that must be really bad. It sounds like you're going through a lot of stress and trouble. But at the end of it, based on what I'm understanding from you, I have a few more questions. How long have you had this fridge for? Are your other electric appliances at home working properly? Have you tried plugging something into that same power socket and see how it responds? Okay, so based on what you're telling me, I think your problem is this. We'll send a technician over next week. So that's basically what it is. Agree and acknowledge that it exists. And then you got taken into this pendulum. You understand what's wrong with it. You have a solution. This is the case where a negative mindset, a negative problem is the pendulum that is taking up a lot of resource. By letting yourself into it, it is now solved. What I just mentioned is, of course, when you cannot avoid the pendulum, when you have to confront it. Where possible, why waste the mental resource? Our time is finite, our energy is finite. We try not to involve ourselves into things that are immaterial to our goals, our existence. What I'm about to say next applies a lot to people who are trying to do something of their own that's never been done before, like a startup in a new niche area. For example, Roger Bannister, when he was trying to break the 4-minute mile. To not be affected by external factors, it's kind of like, you can say what you want, but it's not going to change my mind that I'm still doing this. As long as we do not participate in a shouting match like, yeah, a 4-minute mile is possible. They'll say, no, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. I mean, to get sucked into this kind of a dispute is pointless, because whether I run this 4-minute mile or not, that's my problem, not his. So you need to be very clear about these things. Clarity, present moment focus, to be clear about your goals and objectives. As long as you know, as long as you can visualize the version of the success that you want to achieve, and that the things that you're doing currently are going in that direction, that's all that matters. Everything else is just noise. And the best way to focus in on these goals, to achieve this dream that you have planned properly, is to just avoid the noise. There is something that I teach my kids. A problem is not a problem unless you think it is a problem. A problem is not a problem unless you think it is a problem. When we start to acknowledge the problem and believe that it is a problem, we are giving life to its existence as a pendulum, as a destructive pendulum. This is where the Bible says, renounce evil, and renounce everything that is not in line with your agendas. To renounce is not to resist. For example, if I want to resist against these people that say I cannot do this thing, I cannot do that, it's a waste of my energy. But to renounce is to simply focus that energy, that effort into the place that will get the result instead. So instead of trying to resist against these idiots that saying this plan is not possible, I'm better off just working on my plan. If it suits, I'll go to a place where I can work on this plan, where I will not be influenced by these people. This also brings to mind, people are constantly asking, should you be discussing your dreams and ambitions with other people? I personally believe that it is good and healthy to discuss your dreams and ambitions, but with people of the same vibration. Not with someone who's not. Definitely not with morons. Because you're only going to create problem pendulums, or pendulums that you then have to avoid. All these, whispering, useless noise saying that, oh, cannot be done, your approach is wrong, blah blah blah. If you've already done the homework, if you already know it very well, the last thing you need is a bunch of people who tell you all kinds of unnecessary stuff. They'll confront and confuse you and steer you off your course. The last time I had a big idea, and even after explaining my SWOT analysis of this idea to my mom because she wanted to know what's going on in my life, that was actually a mistake. Because she got so paranoid as a result. She was like, oh, having sleepless nights, you should abort your idea. I've looked up this, I've looked up that. All these give me this impression. This cannot be done. You might get yourself badly harmed. You're going to affect your livelihood. You're going to make hardship for your family. You could be breaking the law. But in actual fact, how can you check when something like that has never been done before? Why we humans have such great power and influence over the world, even as our individual beings, is because we have something the animals do not, and that is the ability to imagine. Upon this imagination, we can also project. Thoughts and beliefs are a lens that we see the world. We can actually use all these imaginations like a theory. Our theory forms our thoughts and beliefs, and through that we can filter what will support, what will not, and then we can accumulate whatever we need to make all these things a reality. Timepieces, phones, all these items were imaged in someone's imagination. The reason why we have all these things is because those people committed to what they had imaged. Finally, I want to share about how to stop a pendulum. I mentioned a little bit about it in my previous example with the auntie or uncle calling tech support to fix the broken refrigerator. You go in, you understand, get the solution, and that pendulum ceases to exist. Ultimately, it is about someone truly wants. For example, Vadim Zeland in his book Reality Transurfing, he gave an example of a boss screaming at the employee. Why would the boss have this unusual reaction? Is it because he had some stress from home, or something in his life is not going to plan? Maybe he really wants to just take a break by the beach. What Vadim Zeland suggested is that we can imagine this boss being at the beach, having a great time. And the strange thing here that happens is, remember I talked about resonance in my previous video and also other videos? Resonance is something that our brains are also able to transmit outside of ourselves. And this is why, like I said, it's very bizarre how people can be united for a same cause, be remotely working on the same ideas without any communication in between. So we do actually have the ability from an energy level to even stop a pendulum. So I want to give you one example with my ex-wife, the mother of my youngest child. Because my daughter, she had some bruises on her knee as well as her lip due to a fall, I was concerned if my ex-wife was going to use this as a reason to not let her spend the next days with me. But I was really looking forward to having my youngest daughter back with my two older kids and me so that we can do some really fun activities over the New Year weekend. I decided to follow Vadim Zeland's approach in Reality Transurfing, and that is to figure out what is my ex-wife's biggest concern. Does she really want to not send it over to me? If what she really wants is money, and in the absence of being able to get money, she would want to make other people's lives miserable. I decided to just project and imagine, what if some rich guy asked her out for a date, or her friends asked her out for a very fun party. I also imagined that it was at some get-together. Then my ex-wife met with some friends who were suddenly doing really well from their side businesses and were just handing out cash gifts to friends. In that way, I was sending blessings and energy. Energy was in the form of blessings, because when you give out, you get back better. When you give out good, it comes back good, even though it could be ex-wife, ex-husband, or someone that you don't like. What does it cost for us to just wish them well, to wish them on their way? It has been proven that neural transmission, as with frequencies that our phones can send and receive. We send blessings, we get blessings. We give out energy in the form of these blessings. above all, I decided it's not going to be of any benefit for me to give any energy to make the pendulum that my youngest daughter will not be able to spend New Year week with us and then bring that to life. Instead, I decided to imagine and bless that my ex-wife was able to get some of the bigger things that she really wanted so that she won't deliberately try to bring misery upon me. The result was unbelievable. Despite she found out that my daughter had the bruise on her lip and also on her knee, the next day she even sent my daughter to my house and I wasn't even expecting it. Me and my older kids, we went out for table tennis. We came back, my youngest daughter literally popped out from the back of the sofa saying surprise. And I was like, how did this happen? It can only be because I decided not to give any life to that negative pendulum and instead imagine from my mind, neurotransmit the blessings and the positive thoughts that this person gets what she wants and therefore that pendulum will cease to exist. Thank you very much and I hope you like my videos about pendulums and reality transurfing. Many more videos to come on this. Subscribe to my channel for more. Also check out my group Inspire at Random on the school.com platform. To watch another video, click this one over here.